becoming famous for it. So, in any case, Hobbes is going to be different. Because for Descartes, the mind is not physical and is separate from the body. And his argument leads you to only know for sure that the thinking thing, the res cogitans, right? Res means thing, cogitan, thinking, right? So the res cogitan exists, but that doesn't prove that the body exists. That could still be just a dream. I'm still in the Matrix, maybe, right? To be clear, by the way, Descartes never saw the movie The Matrix, just so you know, right? He did not. He did not. I know you thought he was in the row, yeah, but no.
You know what would be so funny? If, like, okay, so who's your favorite philosopher?
Hegel.
Hegel? What was his time? Like,
He
when was
died
he
in 1831.
Oh, okay. So like,
Born in 1707.
so like, if you could go back in time and then bring him back with you to our present time.
That would be mean.
No, it'd be so funny. It'd be so funny because you could like teach him all of the new trends and like if you told him no, you're capping, he'd be so confused.
Something tells me he would
Yeah,
just
it's
be
capping.
asked about it.
What's happened?
Like
You're
lying.
lying. Like in like you're lying or like
You're capping.
Really?
Yeah, like you're straight cap. Straight.
stop
That's
the cat.
cap
Oh.
Yeah,
refers
stop
to,
the cap.
that is a lie. Your straight cabin refers to your straight lion.
So if you
It's
brought
very
Hegel.
Is that from Alabama?
No, it's something that kind of just became more
Interesting.
prevalent during COVID.
Yeah.
There was a game called Among Us.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah,
if you told him
probably.
he was sus.
Pretty much.
Yeah, you're a sus or like stop casting.
I do play chess, and I do play golf, but I don't play
Among Us.
Among
It's
Us.
okay, you had to be there.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's not really like that.
Well, this is actually drawn by Descartes. Remember, he was at the anatomy lesson. Also, he dissected animals himself. And in fact, it seems pretty clear that one of the reasons he liked to move around a lot is because, remember, they didn't have cleanliness at the time. And he would dissect animals on his table in his house. And, you know, stuff rots and it gets kind of gross. And so he would move a lot. And I don't, but it also seems interesting that he must have been dissecting human beings because one of the things he discovered was the pineal gland. He's famous for discovering the pineal gland, which is the gland, I guess, right center of the brain. And for whatever reason, he thought that being the center, that was the part where the body connects with the soul.
The pineal gland?
Yes.
Okay.
So pineal, pineal.
Pineal.
Remember,
I'll
there's
just make sure-
no
I'll
correct
just make sure you're
pronunciation
on
of
the
any
same
way.
page.
You could use, apple. Apples. No, wait. Apple is, we always say apple. But
Tomato,
tomato, potato, potato. Yeah.
Potato, potato.
Yeah, so, but pineal gland, pineal gland, I'm sure in French or Latin, it would be neither of those. I don't know what it would be. But in any case, so this is really kind of a fantastic difficulty for anyone who likes Descartes, because he's suggesting that a mind which is neither physical in any way somehow sits inside the middle of the brain and drives the body. And so you end up with really funny looking
They're also just kind of horrifying.
Like the one that looks like a shell, kind of, with the eyeballs sticking out. Oh my gosh.
So it's kind of like this. It's called the homunculus, where you've got the difficulty then of, this is good, because, the idea is this little guy is like driving,
So that isn't it.
No, well, yes, no, maybe. I don't know.
Is that an egg?
Well, the egg doesn't think, so we can't say that the egg
Is he
exists.
frying an egg in a pan?
Yeah.
That's what, it looks like he's doing that.
Well,
He's on autopilot, that's what he's doing.
Oh, because he's doing it in real life.
It reminds me of
Okay.
Ready Player
See that one.
Player one.
One. Yeah, where, you know, some of the characters actually, you know, are in like a big robot, you know, and
Giant mech suits.
Or like
Yeah,
Meet Dave, what was that called? That Eddie Murphy movie. Is that like, there's a movie like that, it's like called Meet Dave or like David or something like that. He was like
I haven't seen that
he
one.
was like controlled by a bunch of little minis.
Well, there's another one that I really liked, and that was where all of the emotions had like their own little
Inside Out.
cartoon character.
Inside Out, yeah.
Inside Out, yeah, oh, that was really cool. But so the problem, of course, is, you know, okay, so there's like this little mind that's driving the body, and then the question is, well, how's the mind interacting with the body? Well, there's a mind inside the mind of the mind, and so on. And so, in other words, this becomes one of those turtles all the way down problems, you know, infinite regression. And the main problem is, well, the two characteristics, the mind and the body, are so completely different that you can't imagine any way that the two of them could interact. So it's an interaction problem. How does this happen? Well, my thinking on this is that he really was just trying to keep himself safe from the church, from burning him at the stake for not believing in the soul. And so the reason he had this little problem was because he was trying to avoid that church issue, by which he would have gotten into trouble had he denied the existence of such a mind or such a soul. Instead, just saying that the body is like a total machine. But now when you think about Hobbes, who is living in just as much of a sort of danger as Descartes, Hobbes is living in a revolutionary England where you have the Protestants have already, well, it's kind of more complex, because think, when you go back, what happened in England was Henry VIII wanted a divorce, and the divorce he wanted was from his wife Catherine of Aragon, who was the Spanish princess. And the trouble was, the Pope couldn't give him what's it called when you break your marriage?
Divorce.
A divorce. Thanks. I can't think of that because, you know, being married 50 years, I'm not even allowed to think about that. But so divorce, right? You know, and the Pope couldn't grant it because he was surrounded by the Spanish forces, and the dad said, "Don't you dare." You know, that's, you know, how the Pope made his decision, you know, at that time. You know, and so Henry couldn't divorce his wife, and he was convinced that he was not having a son because it was her fault. And so he basically decided, okay, that's it. I'm the head of the Church of England. And so he took all the wealth of the church and instead forced all the priests who wanted to stay priests and not get killed become Church of England. And he's the head instead of the Pope. So you have today still the Anglican Church, and in fact, King Charles III is the head of the Anglican or English Church, right? So it became a separate church from the Roman Catholic Church, but it was for the most part following the same kind of principles and so on. If you notice, the High Mass is all pretty much the same. They were the first, though, to switch to English. They switched the language to English. Notice they also came up with the English translation of the Bible, King James authorized version, etc. But so you end up with a British church, but they aren't pietists. And the pietists rebel against that church. There are still Catholics involved, and so you have Catholic involvement, so it's very complex. And you end up with a war between the civil military, who are following Oliver Cromwell, against the monarch who is King Charles I. And King Charles I loses. Remember, Hobbes is a tutor to King Charles' son, Charles, who will become the second, right? So you know he's a friend of the family, etc., right? King Charles is found guilty in trial of being a traitor to himself. That's, the question. You know what? How can I be a traitor? I'm the king. But he's considered a traitor, and they chop his head off. Seems to be the method to get rid of people like that. You chop their heads off, right? By the way, when Charles II comes back as king again, he finds the tomb of Oliver Cromwell, digs it up,
All I know is.
has the head chopped off, and puts it on a spike at the gate to London. Just to let you know, I might not be able to chop your head off while you're alive, but I'll get you.
Is that the same guy on trial or something? He's like,
I don't think they did Oliver Cromwell on trial, because he was dead.
Yeah, but it must have been.
But they
had-
There were others. There were lots of trials.
Yeah, he dug up the corpse and put somebody on trial.
Yeah, there have been many times when people in the church have done that.
It's so messed up.
That's sufficient. They can't.
Must,
You can't believe.
must be good entertainment.
What are they gonna do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You just go
Can you imagine selling popcorn and stands, beer? I don't know what they sold. So anyway, Hobbes is in that kind of environment, and clearly associated with the monarchy. So he writes a book. Besides fleeing lots of times, he writes a book called Leviathan.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
Was he right about the pineal gland, or was it somewhere else?
Pineal gland is in the center,
Yeah.
and there are things that the pineal gland does that are essential to our mood. I think our mood and all sorts of things. Although it's the one that's called
It regulates your sleep and a lot of hormones. I know, mine's
And
probably
hormones.
messed up.
So it's important. We
Yeah.
need this thing.
And it can regulate mood and stuff, so.
But the amygdala, I
Oh,
think,
that's anger and fear.
yeah, does other things, etc. So it's amazing what we know about the brain so far, and we're learning more. Remember, I talked about my favorite orchestrated objective reduction theory, which I'm impressed that I remember the name of it. So the Leviathan, what is the Leviathan about? And why would I think Hobbes is more influenced by Galileo than Descartes, at least officially, because Descartes thinks that there's this mind-body dichotomy, and the mind is the source of all of our thinking. Right? So you get the idea that we're completely free to decide what we want to do from Descartes' point of view. But Hobbes, on the other hand, thinks of the body as a machine, including the brain. And as he describes the body, he talks about the nature of sense coming in as motions. Everything coming into our senses are motions. I remember reading, and he's describing how the objects we're looking at must send little particles that go into our eyes. And I thought, ridiculous. And then I thought, wait a minute, photons. I mean, his vocabulary is way off, but how do we see? Photons enter into the eye, right? We have receptors that go, boing, yeah, there's a thing there I should notice, you know, how they do, right? So he's actually on track, it's just he's very, very early in the beginnings of this. And so there's motions that enter into our senses, the eyes, noise enters into our ear and goes into our brain. Senses, you know, when I'm pushing on something, he thinks these hollow